I walked into my brother's engagement party, already feeling out of place. Crystal glasses clinked, music hummed. Perfume hung heavy in the air. Then I heard her. The bride leaned toward her friends and whispered just loud enough that the stinky country girl had arrived. Laughter followed. My chest tightened, but I didn't react. None of them knew I was standing in a hotel I owned or that this night wasn't ending in toasts. Before I get into what happened next, tap like and tell me where you're listening from and if you've ever been quietly underestimated, because what happened after that whisper changed everything forever. My name is Peyton Burns. I'm 32, and for most of my life, I've learned how to take up very little space. I speak softly. I listen more than I talk. I wear simple clothes that don't announce anything about me. Not because I lack confidence, but because I learned early that being underestimated can be safer than being noticed. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. My older brother Ethan was the star. Teachers loved him. Neighbors praised him. My mother Margaret built her pride around him without ever meaning to hurt me. It just happened. At the dinner table, his achievements filled the room. Mine were met with polite nods, like background noise. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother. She had a way of holding my hand a second longer than necessary, like she was grounding me in the world. When I was a teenager, she told me I was a builder, not of houses or things, but of stability. She promised me a necklace that had been passed down through the women in our family. She said it would be mine one day because I would need the reminder more than anyone else. I left home at 18 with a single suitcase and no goodbye party. I worked whatever job I could find, starting at the very bottom in hotels. Long hours, sore feet, quiet nights eating takeout alone. Over time, I moved up. I learned how everything worked. I saved. I invested carefully. I didn't tell my family. They never asked. For years, I sent money back anonymously. Payments, bills, repairs, medical costs. I didn't want credit. I just wanted them to be okay. So when the invitation to Ethan's engagement party arrived late and almost as an afterthought, I still went. Part of me hoped things had changed, that maybe this time I would walk into a room and feel like I belonged. Standing in that ballroom, though, watching my mother beam beside Ethan and his fiancée, I realized I was still the afterthought. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I tried to disappear into the edges of the room. That's a skill you develop when you grow up knowing you're tolerated, not celebrated. I stood near a tall table, fingers wrapped around a cold glass, watching the party move around me like I wasn't part of it. My mother floated from group to group, smiling too wide, telling the same stories about Ethan. Every sentence started with his name. When she finally noticed me, her smile tightened. Her eyes dropped to my jeans and boots, then back to my face. She leaned in and asked quietly but pointedly if I'd considered wearing something more appropriate. She said Ethan's fiancé came from a refined family, stressing the word like it was a correction. I told her I came straight from work. She sighed the same tired sigh she'd used my whole life and turned away before I finished the sentence. That's when I saw it. The necklace. It rested against Lena's collarbone, catching the light every time she laughed. The delicate chain, the small familiar pendant, my grandmother's necklace, the one she'd promised to me while squeezing my hand in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fading hope. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I watched Lena move through the crowd, graceful and polished, accepting compliments like they were owed to her. The necklace looked wrong on her, not because she didn't look good, but because it didn't belong there. I was still staring when she found me. She approached with a smile that never reached her eyes, placing a hand lightly on my arm like we were close. She suggested we talk somewhere quieter. As soon as we were out of earshot, her expression changed. The sweetness vanished. She told me she knew all about me, about the money I sent home, about how I lived modestly. She asked why someone like me would keep helping people who never seemed to appreciate it. Then she answered her own question. She said it was probably because I was desperate to matter. Her words were soft, controlled, designed to bruise without leaving marks. She finished by telling me that once she married Ethan, it would be better if I kept my distance. Fewer complications that way. She patted my arm, turned, and walked back into the party, my grandmother's necklace glinting against her skin. I stood there perfectly still. I didn't cry. I didn't confront her. Something inside me simply went quiet. The part of me that kept hoping this family would one day choose me finally shut its door. And in that silence, I understood something clearly for the first time. This night wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. I needed air. Real air, not the kind filtered through chandeliers and forced smiles. I slipped out of the ballroom and into the hallway where the carpet muted my footsteps and the noise dropped to a low hum. This part of the hotel felt different, familiar, controlled. It always grounded me. That's when I heard voices. I slowed without meaning to. Ahead of me, near the corner by the service elevators, Howard Whitmore stood with his phone pressed tight to his ear. His back was turned, his shoulders tense. He didn't notice me. He was too busy arguing in a low, urgent voice. I caught fragments, words like after the wedding, cash flow, and we just need them to believe it a little longer. He paused, listened, then said something that made my stomach clench. He mentioned my family, not by name but by implication. Their stability, their ability to help. He hung up and straightened his expression, snapping back into a polished smile before he walked away. I stood there longer than I should have, my pulse steady, my mind racing. That call wasn't panic, it was calculation. I went down to the parking garage and sat in my car with the engine off the concrete walls pressing in around me. I pulled up old records on my phone. Transfers, payments, bills I'd covered for years. Mortgage support, medical costs, always anonymous, always quiet. My family thought they were doing fine on their own, and apparently someone else thought that meant opportunity. The pieces slid into place with uncomfortable ease. The Whitmores didn't care about Ethan, or love, or family. They cared about access, about what they believed my family represented. And if they were wrong, if the money wasn't really there, the fallout would crush everyone involved. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was confirming. I texted Daniel Cross and asked him to meet me near the service entrance. When he arrived, I didn't explain everything. I didn't have to. I asked him to run background checks on the Whitmores. Quietly, thoroughly, he nodded once and left. Then I called my lawyer. Rachel answered immediately. I told her I needed options, fast ones. I also called Hannah, someone who understood numbers the way most people understood emotions. I asked her to look for patterns, anything that didn't add up. I went back upstairs, composed calm, almost detached. Inside, the party continued. Music, laughter, glasses raised, but something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about being insulted anymore. It wasn't even about the necklace. It was about stopping something before it destroyed my family. And if that meant the truth had to come out in the most public way possible, then so be it. By the time I walked back into the ballroom, the night had reached that fragile point where everything looked perfect right before it broke. The music softened, the lights dimmed just enough to feel intimate. Someone tapped a spoon against a glass, signaling the start of speeches. Howard Whitmore was already making his way toward the small stage champagne flute in hand, smiling like a man who believed the room belonged to him. Lena stood beside Ethan, her hand looped through his arm, my grandmother's necklace resting exactly where it shouldn't have been. My mother sat near the front, beaming, unaware that the ground beneath her chair was about to disappear. Daniel crossed my line of sight and gave the smallest nod. Hannah's text came in seconds later. "You were right. It's worse than we thought." Rachel followed with a single sentence. "Everything is verified. You're clear." I didn't feel triumph. I felt calm. Howard cleared his throat and began talking about family, about trust, about how honored they were to be joining ours. His voice carried confidence practiced over years of telling people what they wanted to hear. He raised his glass toward Ethan and Lena and spoke about legacy, about building something lasting together. That was my cue. I sent one word to Daniel. Now. The screens behind the stage flickered. A few guests laughed, assuming it was a glitch. Then the slideshow of engagement photos vanished, replaced by a stark white page filled with official-looking text. The room went quiet in stages like a wave rolling through a stadium. Howard's smile froze. The document on the screen showed a financial summary. Clean, simple, names highlighted, numbers rounded, payments flowing into places they shouldn't have. Another page followed. A different state. The same pattern, then a third, and a fourth. The room filled with murmurs as people leaned forward trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Howard stammered into the microphone, calling it a mistake, a technical issue. He motioned frantically toward the booth. No one moved. The next image appeared, a photo of Lena, younger, different hair, different name beneath it. She went still. The color drained from her face as quickly as if someone had pulled a plug. Elaine Whitmore reached for Howard's arm, whispering urgently, but there was nowhere left to hide. The documents kept changing. Reports, summaries, patterns anyone could follow if they were willing to look. Ethan turned to Lena, confusion written across his face. He searched hers for reassurance and found none. My mother looked between them, her smile gone, her hands clasped too tightly in her lap. I stepped forward, then the sound of my boots against marble cutting through the silence. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. I felt hundreds of eyes land on me, some recognizing me for the first time all night. Daniel's voice came through the speaker, steady and professional, introducing me not as a guest, but as the person responsible for the room they were standing in. I took the microphone gently from Howard's hand. He didn't resist. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice even, "but I think everyone deserves to know what they're celebrating." Lena finally found her voice. She accused me of lying, of being jealous, of trying to ruin her happiness because I couldn't stand being on the outside. Her words came fast, sharp, desperate. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply gestured to the screens. "These records were reviewed by professionals," I said. "They show a pattern of taking money under false pretenses, moving it through accounts, and leaving others to deal with the consequences. The names may have changed. The structure didn't." Howard tried to step away. Security blocked him calmly, firmly. Elaine began to cry, insisting there had been a misunderstanding, that everything could be explained. "That's exactly what this is for," I said quietly. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. A woman in a dark suit walked in, badge visible, her presence cutting through the room like a blade. She wasn't rushed. She didn't need to be. 2 others followed her. She introduced herself and stated clearly and without drama that there were ongoing investigations connected to the information displayed. She asked Howard and Elaine to come with her. Howard's confidence collapsed in real time. His shoulders sagged. His voice cracked. He tried to say my name like it was a plea. Lena turned to Ethan, her grip tightening on his arm. She begged him to believe her, to remember what they had, to not let his sister do this. Her voice broke raw and frightened. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped back. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly. "I don't think I ever did." Something in Lena snapped. She screamed, accusing me of destroying everything, of being exactly what she'd called me earlier. She lunged forward, but security intercepted her easily. As they guided her away, the necklace slipped from her neck and hit the floor with a sound far louder than it should have made. The room felt hollow after they were gone. I picked up the microphone one last time. "The food is paid for," I said. "The bar will stay open. You're welcome to stay or leave as you choose." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. The DJ hesitated, then started the music again, softer than before. I walked over to my mother and showed her my phone. Transfers, payments, bills. Years of support she'd assumed came from someone else. She stared at the screen, then at me, her expression folding inward. Ethan found me near the bar later. He didn't speak at first. When he finally did, it was to say he was sorry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. I held my grandmother's necklace in my palm, its weight familiar grounding. The party didn't end with cheers or applause. It ended with truth, and that I realized was far more powerful. The days that followed felt quieter, like the world had exhaled after holding its breath too long. The investigations moved forward without drama. There were statements, meetings, careful language. Consequences unfolded the way they always do when truth is finally allowed to stand on its own. Ethan came by a few days later. No excuses, no speeches. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of the certainty he'd worn his whole life. He told me he kept replaying the signs he'd ignored. I told him healing doesn't start with explanations. It starts with listening. He nodded like that was something new to him. My mother called after that. Her voice didn't carry authority this time. It carried weight. She said she hadn't known. I told her that wasn't the same as not being responsible. I showed her the records again, the payments, the bills, the years I'd stayed invisible so no one would feel indebted to me. She cried quietly, not to be forgiven, but because something had finally broken open. The necklace came back to me without ceremony. I didn't put it on right away. I held it for a long moment, instead, feeling the cool metal settle into my palm like a promise kept, even if it arrived late. We didn't fix everything, not even close, but the pretending stopped, and that mattered more than apologies. Some endings aren't clean, they're honest. And honesty, I've learned, is the first real step toward peace. A few weeks later, I hosted a small breakfast at the hotel. A young woman from a rural town sat at the table, nervous, unsure if she belonged. I made sure she did. Watching her listen, learn, and slowly relax reminded me why I stayed quiet for so long and why I don't have to anymore. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or made to feel small by your own family, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments, and if this resonated with you, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.